Okay, let me begin with a summary of the talk. The planet is urbanizing and is urbanizing very badly. And it's essential to use science to plan the human habitat. A combination of science and lessons from traditional settlements create the best urbanism, because the traditional settlements define evolved elements of architecture and urbanism, which means that over millennia, we have human beings have discovered solutions that are adapted to human biology. In the last 15 years, I would say, the traditional elements of urbanism have been verified by new scientific and technological tools that are diagnostic techniques. For example, eye tracking and neuroscience, and I believe Brandon Rowe is there presenting to talk about eye tracking, and other people are presenting neuroscience. This is a revolution in linking traditional urbanism with the latest scientific developments. This goes against what we have been doing in the 20th century, which is to build cities by implementing a strange ideology that is not concerned with human beings, which is very strange and paradoxical, because cities are built for human beings, or are supposed to be built, but the conclusion is that they're not. Instead, we have had implementation of massive social engineering, trying to reshape humans into non-biological pawns or entities. And this approach to building our cities is generating an enormous amount of stress, and stress, of course, over the long term, body stress generates pathologies because it lowers the body's natural immune reaction. So this is this has nothing to do with architecture. It has nothing to do with ideology. It has nothing to do with commerce. It has to do with lowering the human health of people who have to live in cities. So we are facing cities where you have giant skyscrapers sitting in a vast expanse of lawn, which is proved to be unworkable because it makes cities inhuman and unwalkable. This has resulted in cutting down urban trees for parking roads, parking lots and roads. And places like India and Pakistan are facing a catastrophic possibility of losing a percentage of the population during the summer, because the heat island effect, after cutting down hundreds of thousands of trees, approved by the government, of course, everything is perfectly legal, approved by the government, it could lead to huge deaths of cities in hot climates. So what we want to do is transform the urban fabric towards the human scale and human connectivity. What are the emergency measures we can take? Well, first of all, stop cutting trees and start planting trees. That should be done immediately, today, tonight. And then we have all these horrible, ugly buildings. We cannot replace them, so we could at least transform the lower 3 stories so that personal contact can occur with other people, and implement new regulations for adaptation so that what is built from now on legally goes towards satisfying the human body and human senses instead of this abstract and inhuman geometry. So one step at a time, this will be a long-term evolution towards a living urban fabric. And the worst interventions should be identified, and if when the opportunity arises and the funding is there, then we will have selective interventions to demolish and substitute these toxic designs. Now, concrete boxes breed alienation and depression, and I want to begin with the dimension of our young generation. Minimalist interiors are now known to lower the IQ of a baby. Therefore, we need to transform our living environments, which are usually in the cities, transform the ground floors and the high-rise residents to the interiors that they're exposed to in order to accommodate children. At the present time, children cannot connect to life. They're prisoners in a nightmare world, and their intellectual growth and physical growth is stunted by an inhuman environment. Here in the United States, everyone wants a not very pretty house in the suburbs because instinctively they feel that a city living in the modernist design paradigm is bad for their children. They feel, the parents feel this instinctively, yet they're faced by propaganda by the media that tells them otherwise. But so this has spurred the growth of a very ugly suburbia, but still, suburbia offers the opportunity for children to have some contact with nature, which is not possible in post-war cities. And yes, modernist design lowers the children's intelligence, and we are gathering information. Michael Mahaffey and I published a paper, Intelligence in the Information Environment, in 2012, that gathered data on animals that showed that the brain is insufficiently wired and smaller in volume if the young are raised in minimalist environments without visual complexity of the correct kind, which spurs the growth of the brain and the development of the brain. Those experiments were done not on humans, but on fish and on mice. And of course, the corollary is very, very strong that the same thing occurs in humans. Well, this was 12 years ago. Nobody cared about this paper. Nobody did anything. The architectural establishment continued to build its minimalist environments, and the press continued to praise these minimalist environments. And so another generation of babies were raised in horrible environments. Undeterred, my colleagues and I, Alexandros Lavdas and Marco Aresta, wrote 2 more papers because there was a shocking decrease in IQ development for children that were born during the COVID. And during the COVID, there was this discontinuity in the environment of children because they were stuck at home. And most houses today do not have enough complexity for the child's brain to develop. And many urban residents were unable even to go walking in nature because of their position. So we raised these questions. Again, these questions are not addressed by the establishment. Now let's go to see why this disconnect occurs. This is a philosophical disconnect. Architectural culture promotes disengaging environments. And special interests use technology to create conditions of sensory isolation. This is the opposite of what my friends and I are proposing, that is necessary for biology, for the well-being of adults, and, as I just pointed out over the last 3 minutes, absolutely essential for the intellectual development of our children, and therefore to guarantee the future of the human race. The profession is implementing typologies that do the opposite of what humans require for biology to continue in a healthy way. So we have here a huge contradiction, and this is what is creating a lot of conflict, professional conflict. So we need to transform the geometries that make us anxious into totally different geometries that keep us mentally and physically healthy. One positive development is biophilic design. People have always known that the human body responds viscerally and very positively to color surfaces and spaces that remind us of nature and living animals, plants. So biophilia is part of, but not all of the equation. Biophilic design is part of creating spaces of well-being and healing spaces. For example, biophilia gives rise to ornament. And everyone in the conference here knows how important ornament is. Not because of some nostalgia for the past, but because of human biology. Medical experiments now accumulating show that intimate contact with green ecosystems improves health tremendously. These are measurable improvements. We need street trees next to buildings, as much as possible green. And this is the opposite of the academic discussion of greens. I'm talking about accessible medium and small pocket parks that everyone can enjoy, and that a mother with her child can go because it is 1 block away from where they live. Not a giant park, because the giant park is of limited use because of the size. It has to do with the size and the fractal distribution. The government will go in and destroy native green and say they're going to build a giant park somewhere else, but nobody visits that park except for those who live right next to it. So there are totally unrealistic ideas because there's a misunderstanding of who uses green, what the green distribution is. Now, as I'm saying this, we have the design patterns of Christopher Alexander, which I will touch on later, that tell you exactly how to build urban parks and what the distribution should be, what their dimensions should be. So all of this is known, but it's not implemented. Well, what we need is a necklace of small, intense, and green spaces with bushes and trees. So the medical experiments that are connected with eye tracking, which is separate, a separate diagnostic tool, shows that the human body reacts unconsciously. So it is not obvious how we engage with the built environment, but this can be measured through, for example, the visual attention software, and there are about 10 other separate diagnostic tools that measure how we engage, but this goes far beyond the old surveys, because when you ask somebody, they don't know why they're engaging with something, whereas what I'm talking about is a collection of tools that measure unconscious engagement. So here is the facade of an award-winning building that's just a concrete block. It could be any number of stories high, and you see nothing. But the eye tracking, actually this is eye tracking software, which is even cheaper to use, shows that a person refuses to look at this building. There's nothing there to look at. The eye is drawn to the corner. So this huge building sitting in the middle of a city is just menacing. It has no engagement with the user, who has to either enter it somewhere or pass by it every day. So these geometries are just deadly, and they have to be transformed. And the way to transform it is to revalue our cultural heritage, which is different in every location, but it was tested in that location, and that will create engagement. It is, of course, a big fight with the established powers of architectural institutions to try to reintroduce cultural heritage in design. That's a separate matter. You know, getting into that. So back to the tools. So here is a nice solution to introduce some ornamentation that is not only just superficial ornament, but it goes along with the tectonics because it reinforces the edges, it reinforces the possible opening with different materials. And look at what happens when we do the eye tracking. The eye engages, the person engages with the ornament, whereas the previous blank facade is totally alien. Now, if you ask any child, they will tell you this. But it is the architects who refuse to see what their eyes are telling them. So big money interest builds structures that we do not see. And they're just menacing when we are next to it because we feel this giant thing next to us and we cannot engage with it. We have the eye tracking. And we have so many recent articles using eye tracking. I think this is just taking off exponentially using eye tracking, both eye tracking as wearable glasses and visual attention software, which mimics eye tracking. People working on this are Anne Sussman, Alexandros Lavdas, Brandon Rowe, who should be with you there. Many people are jumping in. These are two studies done by Alexandros Lavdas, where by serendipity, you have a nice old-fashioned building in front of a curtain glass wall in the back, and you see that the eye just fails to see this giant monster in the back. It doesn't exist. The eye engages with the building in front because the building in front is human. That's it. Now, going on the scale of the street, we have had another entire set of mistakes created by favoring a fast traffic flow through the downtowns that have made cities hostile to pedestrian traffic. So there are solutions in design patterns and the network city, which are documented, and these can be implemented immediately. What I want to mention here, because I have limited time, is that the design of the facades is connected viscerally to the ability to use the open space. So this is anathema to the planning authorities. And even some of my friends who are new urbanists have made the mistake of saying that it doesn't matter what the facades are like, just make the roads very nice and the city will live. I disagree with them because the city is a connecting mechanism, and a major part of the connection involves walking, which is a flow in a network of directions, but it also involves connecting visually through the eye and emotionally. So both of these mechanisms have to reinforce each other. Otherwise, you don't get the required feeling of ease into the city. Now, as everyone knows, cities were destroyed after the Second World War because large money wanted to make cities only for cars, and large money, including the petroleum industry, the building industry, the gasoline, the tire manufacturers, and in the United States, the tramways, which were a very nice local transportation system, were bought up and dismantled. And this was the subject of a lawsuit in the United States. And the lawsuit, the United States versus National City Lines, the cartel of the big power and big money interests that destroyed the tramways was found guilty in federal court and was fined, I think, $100 or something ridiculous like this. So they were found guilty and they went scot-free. So I think we're coming towards the end. Since World War II, we have been building in a manner disassociated from our body's needs. And architects use a toolkit that disconnects us from the world. It frustrates the human sensory system. The architectural industrial complex makes enormous amount of money by disengaging users from the city, which causes anxiety and stress. And to find the roots of that, I mean, why would society accept this? Well, the conference is lucky to have James Stevens Curl there sitting in the front row. He explains the sinister philosophy and motivation of why this came to pass. And if you told somebody who has not read Professor Curl's book, they would say, you know, this is ridiculous. You're making this up. This is just too evil. Well, please read Professor Curl's book. This is exactly what happened. So this is a scan that we made with a paper with Nir Buras, and to show how these award-winning pedestrian plazas, which, you know, these are nice pedestrian plazas, open space, nice light, no cars, but nobody uses them because they're so ugly. They're ugly. Look at the scanning on the bottom. The eye picks out only the parking sign and the warning sign for the pedestrians. The rest of the structure fails to engage. It is inhuman. So you can have something that has the correct geometry and it fails totally. So this is the paper that's what happens in your brain when you walk down the street. I'm happy to say that it has many thousands of readers. And we're finally bringing these facts to the public attention. Now, what happens if you walk down an inhuman path that is perfectly pedestrian friendly, okay? You walk down that path, but the visual message is causing stress. So you're forcing yourself to go to a store a block away. By forcing yourself to walk in a hostile environment, you're generating mental fatigue and stress, and that is making you sick in the long term. That's it. It is nothing else needs to be said. Now, I mentioned the pattern language. My late friend, Christopher Alexander, began to document design patterns that can be used by everybody to get a certain percentage of success, and then they can work to get the additional adaptation for the actual location. And then Michael Mahaffey and I and several people recently published a new pattern language with some more patterns. And these are design solutions that people can adapt to design today, to design environments. Today, we have many architects who practice traditional forms, who either use design patterns of Alexander or just reinvent human spaces and human proportions very nicely, and they're practicing all over the world, and I think everyone in the conference knows about them. The people who are members of the architectural uprising and classical architects, etc. So I think, let's see, some pointers on urban spaces that have to be surrounded by welcoming facades, and they have to be permeable to pedestrian flow so you don't feel threatened by cars coming into the urban space. The rules for designing cities and streets, urban fabric, pedestrian access, and facades are embedded in the built forms And Christopher Alexander documented these. Classical architects copy them from successful historic cities, and they obtain excellent solutions. So we have all the tools that are needed to design wonderfully human cities today. But they're not taught in architecture schools. In fact, the opposite rules are taught in architecture schools. We can get into more details. The 15 fundamental properties of Christopher Alexander outlined in The Nature of Order books go into the more geometrical basis of what creates living structure. Again, this is fundamental work. Look at this scan from a paper by Ann Sussman and myself. You see that the eye engages with the entire facade. Totally, the blue glow, you see, covers the entire facade. This is not a particularly attractive facade, but it is human. It has the human scale. We look at the windows. We're supposed to look at the windows, and not the corners. If you remember the minimalist building, the eye goes to the corner, which is tectonically irrelevant. But here, you focus on all of the facade, and then you can focus on the windows. So we engage with the facade. And the reason is that we have these mathematical symmetries, and the symmetries reinforce each other. And this is the whole theory that we are developing, the mathematical description of coherence that ties into Alexander's work with the 15 properties. But I will come back to this controversial topic. The goal of modernist ideology is to undo visceral human connection. And that begins with the Bauhaus minimalist modernism and continues to postmodernism and deconstructivism. Okay, I think I should be finishing here. Policymakers should adopt transformations that generate living environments. We need to reuse what has worked in the past versus what has been an abysmal failure. This is what my friends, the classical architects, keep saying. We know the solutions from the past, we can apply them, adapted to new materials, and we get wonderful cities. Stop believing the unethical shills who promote fashionable images of buildings and cities. And I get a horrible feeling of nausea in my stomach every morning when I open my computer and I see a new building that has been approved in a wonderful historic city, and the building looks like an image of death. And it has been commissioned by that city, and it's going to kill everything around it. We just have to let the decision makers know that there is a good way to do things. There is some optimism because today we have the internet. So we can communicate, like the architectural uprising, we can communicate all around the world. This was not possible 30 years ago. We had to send letters, okay? And then we had to publish in newspapers. But now, anyone anywhere in the world has access to this information. They may not know about it, but they have access to the information. And the information tells them how healthy life attaches to the urban geometry and what the proper way to design the urban geometry is. Plus, we have means of transforming industrial minimalist forms into connected living environments. So that's the first step. We can go piecemeal, one step at a time, to create a human city that will be healing. Okay, that's it.
Thanks a lot.